The concept of being your own mother. And this is going to take us into exercise 25, exploring the internal mother and child. Exercise 26, exploring your emotional needs. And exercise 27, creating your ideal mother. Now, this section is one that has changed my life probably the most. And in June of 2023, while doing, sacred plant medicine, in this case, some shrooms, I really got this beautiful message from spirit. And they forced me to go look at myself in front of the mirror. And at the time, I had a very tumultuous, painful relationship with my mother. We have been no contact for a long time, but internally there was still so much anger and grief about what was stolen and taken from me in my childhood. And they had me go in front of the mirror and say a very simple phrase to myself: I am my own mother. And that phrase broke me down. And that phrase, it was hard for me to say because, for one, I didn't want to admit that I was behaving in the same way as my mother. But two, and I didn't understand this at the point, I didn't want to take responsibility for now fulfilling what my mother wasn't capable of doing for me. So, in a way, I was still stuck in this very rigid dynamic within myself where I refused to give myself what I thought it was my mother's responsibility to provide for me, almost like a bratty child. Like, why should I have to do this for myself? Other people have moms who do this for them. I should have had one that did this for me. I'm not going to do it for myself. And again, it was very subconscious. When I really sat with what spirit was trying to tell me, I understood that I had this radical responsibility to be my own parent. This really weird thought weaved into my head as I was walking one day, where it dawned on me that I had been parenting myself in my mother's absence since I had left home at 17. That I was my own parent, that I was guiding myself. But who taught me how to guide myself? Who taught me how to parent myself? My mother. And so I was doing it in the same ways that my mother did, especially when I disappointed myself. If I had fallen short in some way, then I would withhold love for myself and I would be really cruel to myself verbally. I would shut down. So I would do all the things that my mother did. She was very withholding, she was very cruel. I didn't realize that I didn't have to continue doing those things to myself. And I know, as common sense as it sounds, when I talk to my clients, so many times they are parenting themselves really in a really cruel and mean way. They are their biggest bully. Why? Because their mother did that to them. Right. And so in this case, mother is a proxy for that main caregiver. So it could have been your father, could have been your grandmother, could have been an aunt, cousin. Maybe you were adopted by a family member. It doesn't matter. Whoever filled that role of nurturer. The other way that our mothers program us is by demonstrating how they deserve love. So if you watch your mother struggle with men, struggle with abuse, you might also think that that's just part and parcel with how you are meant to be loved, right? That can be a very hard thing to disconnect. When we consider that we are our own mother and therefore we are also our own child, then that changes a lot of things because, one, it forces us to take responsibility for the way that we mother and guide ourselves. But two, it forces us now to prioritize and to listen to the needs of the child who we are probably so used to repressing. Every time a negative thought comes up tied to some trauma that you experienced in the past and you repress it, it is equivalent to a child coming up to their mother saying, Mama, I need you, I'm in pain. And when you can't face that pain, that's equivalent to the mother saying, shut up, go away, you're too inconvenient, you're too much, these emotions, I don't want to deal with them right now, shut up. You go and you lock them in a room. But understand that the very thing that you're looking for, that piece of yourself, that love for oneself, that is found in what you are denying and locking away. So then you're doing something more painful to yourself. The very thing that you need, you're refusing to give yourself. And then you're not even finding it within yourself. And that's going to cause this kind of cycle where you feel really invalid without understanding that it's you that refuses to validate yourself. It is you that keeps dismissing your own pain. It is you that will not look yourself in the eyes and see the real you. It is you who has no space for any suffering, for any display of emotion other than this very rigid emotional expression that you have allowed. So I'm only allowed to sit with my emotions when they're more positive emotions. Think about what a toxic relationship that is. If you are both your mother and your child, think about how abusive you are with yourself. You won't give yourself any space to express any emotions unless they're comforting. But you are uncomfortable within yourself. So then where do you go with those? With those very deep, personal, intimate emotions around self worth, around self loathing, around your own pain, around the trauma that you experience. You have abandoned yourself effectively. And so we will seek fulfillment in outside relationships, but those outside relationships, truly, they just don't have the context to feed us as well as we want to be fed. They just don't. We have made relationships these very laborious, painful, draining things because I don't know how to feed myself well. No one ever taught me how to feed myself well. So then I expect the world to do that for me. So I go out in the world and I say, hey, I need this. I need this from you. Please feed me, nurture me, validate me, affirm me, give me something that I need to help me regulate myself. Right. And so let's put it in terms of food. You come to me, you say you want to be fed, and I want to feed you. I want to feed you well. Right. That's part of what I do as a helper and a healer, right? As a teacher. So I go in my kitchen, I go in my heart, I prepare the best meal for you, but I'm preparing it based off of what's best, what I best understand how to give, which is probably the best way that I know how to love myself or how I would want to be loved, you know? And so I prepare this meal for you and I lay it out, and there's a beautiful bone china place setting, it's fancy because that's what I want, right? But then you get the meal and you're like, oh, I just wanted pizza. And oh, I like my pizza cold. And oh, I like my pizza in front of the TV. I don't want this fancy place setting. Think about what that does for both of us. For me, I feel like I failed you, and I feel drained for trying to pour into you and you not wanting it the way that I'm trying to give it to you. And you feel ashamed and exhausted because disappointed because you asked for help but didn't get the help that you needed, and it was hard for you to ask for help in the first place. And asking for help, you didn't get the help, right? So not only did I ask and not receive it, but then I did not receive it. You know what I'm saying? I know it sounds like I'm saying the same thing, but no. I asked for help and didn't receive it is one issue. I asked for help and nothing came is another issue, right? I know it sounds very similar. One, my need wasn't met, and one, I was vulnerable and my need wasn't met. You know what I mean? Those are two separate issues that hit two different wounds, right? So if it's really hard for you to ask for help, just the act of asking and it not being met is traumatic on its own. And then your needs not being met is traumatic on its own, depending on how we internalize. So then I'm probably not going to ask for help again. Probably am not. I don't want to ask for help. And then I feel bad about the fact that my need isn't able to be met. I take it again as proof of how broken I am, that no matter how well someone tries to love me, I still feel like this. Instead, if I would cook my own meal for myself, that is, learn how to self regulate, learn how to self soothe, learn how to like really be emotionally mature and to be self sufficient in the emotional, then I'm not concerned with how you feed me because I don't need you to feed me. So then, whatever you give to me, I'll make something good of it, right? Because I'm not starving. So, because I'm already full, okay, thank you for this. I appreciate it, right? But it doesn't make a huge difference in my life. So then I'm not as demanding of those things for my outer relationships. And I can feed myself what I best need the best. I'm always full. I know what I need better than anyone else knows. I'm the one with the unique context to understand what my wounds are and how best to dress those wounds, how best to minimize my own pain. And if you don't know how to do that, it's because you've abandoned yourself. If you have a good relationship with yourself, you know how to do that. If a stranger came up to you and they said, help me, the first thing you would have to say is, how can I help you? What does help look like for you? The reason why you're not able to feed yourself well is because you're a stranger unto yourself. You don't know how to feed yourself well because you don't know what your needs are. That's what we must fix first, our relationship with ourselves. We must be a good mother and an obedient child. it becomes really important to understand your own emotional needs. It makes everything easier when you know exactly what you need. And you would think, it makes it easier for relationships because I can tell them exactly what I need from them. But it makes it even easier than that because you don't need much of anything from your relationships. Right now, we expect our external relationships to do a lot of work for us, right? They're supposed to entertain us, make us happy, fulfill us. But once you know how to do that for yourself, you are your own mother, you are your best friend, you no longer need relationships to do any of that for you. Therefore, you can just enjoy them for whatever they are, right? They can be easy and low stress because there aren't these unspoken demands. There aren't these emotional and energetic demands that you make of one another to feed me, pour into me, because you know how to do that for yourself. Right. So if you're a member of the community, you're going to find the online community, you're going to find a visualization there for you to meet your mother and meet the child to really make sure that they're of one accord. But you don't need to do that visualization if you don't have access to that. You need to sit into what do I need from my mother that I didn't get? And how would my most perfect mother show up? And that's what some of the exercises are laid out to help you do. But overall, you have to take time to figure out, okay, what does a perfect relationship look like for me? Romantic relationship. How does that show up? Okay. How do my friendships show up? A really edifying, healthy friendship. What are the artifacts of that relationship? If I had the perfect relationship with my mother for me, how does that look? And as you look at that, look at what you are seeking to get from those outer relationships that you can give yourself, and start asking yourself why you're not giving it to yourself. Why aren't you? Do you want friendships where they're your cheerleaders, where they breathe life into you, where they hype you up? You can do that for yourself. Why aren't you doing it? Now, that's not to say that I don't want those things still in my outer relationships, but I no longer need those things from my outer relationships if I am able to give them to myself. Then it's nice if you are my cheerleader. It's nice if you breathe life into me. But as long as you're not hurting me and we're having a good time, the vibes are good, then I really don't care if you're doing that or not. It really doesn't matter so much as long as you're not doing the opposite, as long as you're not trying to hurt me, right? Again, it makes relationships very easy. Do you have secrets from yourself? Are there things you're hiding? Are there things you refuse to see within yourself? Then you're not a very good partner to yourself. You're not a very good partner or parent, excuse me, and you're not a very good child. And it's important that we first fill whatever we want our external relationships to fill for us as far as we can. So maybe I can't fulfill all my needs from a romantic partnership, but I can fulfill a lot of my needs from that romantic partnership. I can. And then I don't put such heavy demands on those relationships, right? I'm not seeking it as much either, right? What do I want for my friendships? I can be my own best friend. I can be my best cheerleader. I can listen. I can hold space for myself. I can affirm myself. I can do all that for myself. What do I need from my mother? I want her to sit and validate me. I want her to hold herself accountable for how she's done me wrong. I want her to be a soft space for me when I'm down and I need something. Those are all things I can do for myself. Once you take responsibility for feeding yourself well, you stop being a beggar, a people pleaser. You stop with the good girl syndrome. You stop seeking that validation and to be fed from everything outside of you. And you probably make your relationship so much nicer because a lot of people who don't know how to feed themselves well are drains on all of their relationships, demanding to be fed, but never being satisfied with how they're being fed, demanding more, demanding more. You make your relationships miserable, right? Including the one with yourself. So, this one to me is revolutionary, learning to mother yourself well, learning to love yourself well. Ask yourself if you treated yourself, a child, the way that you're treating yourself, excuse me, if you treated your child that you gave birth to the way that you're treating yourself, I want you to think about the things you say, how you take care of yourself, how you build yourself up, how you tear yourself down, how you punish yourself. Would that be seen as abuse of your child, or would you be lauded as being a beautiful parent? If you would be admonished as being an abusive parent, a neglectful parent, a bad parent, then stop abusing yourself, please. Be honest about how you're treating yourself so that you can stop and start giving yourself the things that you need so that you can finally start to flourish in this life. So really sit down with yourself and suss out what your emotional needs are. This is going to be a raw, intimate conversation with yourself, and no one else has the answers to this. You're not going to be able to interview someone else. Well, what are your emotional needs? No. What are your emotional needs? Because what someone else needs might not be what you need, and how that need is fulfilled in someone else might not be how you need to fulfill that need. Some people have a need for more touch, some people more for conversation, more for time spent. And I'm not talking about love languages. I'm talking about how you feel fulfilled. In what ways do you understand that fulfillment?